Hey, Doodlebomb here, and I'm going to show you how I sketched and painted the Krak de Chevaliers citadel in Syria, so stick around if you want to see more. This project came about because I wanted to give a real good in-depth test run to my Uncharted Traveler's palette that I made in the last episode. The reason I chose the Krak de Chevaliers citadel is because it is the inspiration for the Syria level in Uncharted Drake's Deception. My first attempt at mixing the colors for this palette ended up being just too washed out, and here you can see a side-by-side comparison. The top one is the original, and the second one is the new set that I'm going to be using for this video. I then found a reference photo that I really liked, which I'm going to put on the lower right of the screen, and it will remain there for the rest of this video so you can see what source I'm looking at while I'm working. And the very first step for me right now is always doing the sketching. I find that I really like sketching first. I used to do the painting first and then sketch around it, but I really enjoy the inking part, and I feel like that sketch style is more characteristic of my art style than the painting itself, and I definitely do need to improve on my watercolor, but this is a good way to get started. So the very first step is to block out the bigger shapes, and this is the absolute hardest for me because I love the details. The entire reason I do these things is for the details, but it's so important to do the big shapes first because it's a lot easier to notice, oh my gosh, my proportions are way off whenever you have two big blocks, as opposed to I've just spent an hour doing a window and 37 bricks, and now I don't like any of the overall drawing. So it's good to start there. I know it kind of sucks, especially if you're a detailed girl like I am, but it's really good to do. Here, I'm just trying to draw dots where the tops of the archways are going to be. I knew the archway was going to be the focal point and probably my favorite part of this whole drawing, but it does have this perspective and depth, which is the reason it's so interesting, but also is the reason it's going to be hard. So I'm trying to set myself up for success and just put these little points here to guide me along the way, and then you won't even notice them once I get done with the drawing because I've incorporated them into the rest of the line work. And I'm sure you've noticed that the very first archway is totally disproportionate to the following archways. And I noticed too, don't you worry. I'm going to work on it, and hopefully it'll be disguised by the end of the drawing. But this is one of the things I love about ink, is that it is permanent, and it's one of the ways that keeps me from getting bogged down and trying to fix and fix and fix, and really just helps me create, because I don't want to punish myself for creating by making sure everything is exactly perfect. Because then if you're worried about that, then you stop creating. So one of the ways I've helped get over that perfectionism is to only use ink, because then, well, once the mistake is there, it's there, and 9 times out of 10 you don't notice the mistake by the end, and almost 100% of the time it works out better than you think it will when you make the mistake, because it seems like this huge obstacle, and it's really not. So while the in-game level is not an exact replica, it is very clearly referencing the Citadel. It has that Crusader look, the location is high on a hill above a city, and those things came directly from the Krak de Chevaliers. I would like to say that I had a plan and I was following some sort of formula in my head about what I'm drawing next, but there really is no rhyme or reason whatsoever at this point. And then once we get later, I do start having a little bit more forethought, but really at this moment, it's just me following my bliss. You may have noticed that there are a lot of harder lines when it comes to the architecture, and softer and more kind of implied lines and shapes when it comes to nature. That's just something I tend to do, and I kind of do that throughout. The only times I really try to draw a lot of attention to the nature is if that is the focal point. But for me, this project, the focal point is the Citadel, and so implying this greenery and kind of building the surrounding is good and necessary, but I don't want to draw too much attention to it. And one of the ways I do that is by just drawing little disconnected lines, kind of implying shapes, and not spending too much time detailing it with the paint later either. And now that we've got the overall scene sketched out, I can start doing the details, which is my absolute favorite part. And of course, I'm not going to draw every single brick on this. that would take forever and honestly would probably be distracting. So one of the ways I'm going to do this is do little patches of bricks, and I'm going to really pay attention to my line weight to use that and kind of imply the shading and this dimension to it, by having it heavier line work on the left side, right, implies that there is a shadow there, as opposed to on the right side where it's lighter. So that's something I'm going to be thinking about while I'm doing all these little bits here and help give this detail to the bridge. Another thing about this location in-game is that the designers wanted it to be clear that it was a tourist spot. So if you look around, you can see that they added a ticket booth and a gift shop and various lighting elements throughout to show it as a tourist spot, but it also adds to like that dynamic feel of the level. And one thing that I think it also justifies is in this level, you shoot off various locks to get through gates and things, and the location and doors and locks are really incorporated into the gameplay, and making it a tourist location, I think, makes it justify having those obstacles in the game. But I haven't seen that explicitly stated anywhere. The information about the ticket booth and gift shop and lighting elements and making a tourist spot, I all got from various Uncharted sources like the art book. Once I move to the buildings further back, I try really hard to show less detail because that's what happens in real life. The further something away is, the less detail you can see, and I don't want to put too much detail on it and make it look like it's at the same space as the bridge. I do fail at this a few times when I accidentally make the bricks the same size as the ones on the bridge, but overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I had a plan, it's just I don't always execute it correctly. One thing I've been trying really hard to get better at is doing perspective drawings. I can do decent whenever I can sit down with a ruler and super plan it out, but obviously that's not something I'm always able to do, and so this is me trying to get better at it. I know I'm not perfect, but it is getting better, and one of the ways I've found that's been really helpful is drawing buildings with bricks, because every row of bricks shows you a change in that perspective. So you'll find it's at a sharper angle at the top and the bottom, and then it starts to get almost at the same degree as the horizon toward the middle. And so that's one thing you'll see me doing with trying to draw these bricks in, is really to demonstrate that perspective, help give that depth, and help give that dynamic feel to it. And the bricks really help in that, especially when I get to that round building. I thought that was really fun, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Here I'm combining line weight and detail to really draw attention to that first archway. And the reason I want to do that is because the more detail I get on the first one, the more detail I can take away from the following ones. And so starting with more detail and that line weight to really demonstrate that we're on the dark side of the bridge helps to demonstrate the depth in the overall drawing. So I've got specific bricks on the first one and a couple bricks on the next one, and fewer bricks as I go back. I love this little archery window with all the cracked bricks around it and the moss or whatever growing on it. I'm not exactly sure what it is, lichens, patina, whatever. And I love it so much, but then I realize that I am drawing too much attention to it because I love it so much, and I keep wanting to put more and more time and detail into it, and I know I need to move away from it because that is not the focus of this drawing. And honestly, this drawing is a little bit too small to get the sort of detail that I want to put into it. So it's good to catch yourself on the things that you like, and there's that phrase, kill your darlings, and the darlings I have to kill are always hyper fixating on a detail I like too much, even though I know it's not the focal point. Yes, I do know that phrase really mostly pertains to writing, but I think it applies everywhere if you think about it. And we are in the final stretch of the drawing. I know I spent quite a bit of time on it, but to me it was really important. That's how I got the details and I really liked. And really, I wanted to be happy with this drawing on its own, and then the painting was just going to amplify it. And you may be wondering, well, why didn't you draw any details on those back towers? Well, that's because they're so far away. I don't have a pin that's tiny enough to do that. Even if I did, it would take too much time and it'd draw too much attention away. And really, that back tower for me, my favorite part about it is that kind of dynamic lighting, and that's going to be achieved with the paint. So I just kind of left them alone, added the bare minimum details, and then I'm going to move on to the next phase, which is the watercolor. So once I was set up with my watercolor paints, the very first thing I did was a wet on wet gradient wash. Now all that means is that I wet the page first with clear water, and then I added the watercolor of choice to that. And gradient just means it goes from darker to light of that color. And so the really good thing about wet on wet is that when you put your brush in the paint and put it on the wet, it just kind of soaks it and spreads it out for you, and it gives this really good soft look that I really like for skies, and also being kind of a base wash for other areas. Now I do go back in with a little bit more paint in various areas to try and get it to soak in and kind of give a good splotchiness to the sky, but be careful when you do this because you're almost just as likely to suck the color and water back into your brush as you are putting out there. So it's always kind of a gamble, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now that I got the base washes done, I can go on to going a little bit more detailed, so I switched to a smaller brush. You may be wondering why I didn't put a wash on the towers, and the reason is because I really want to leave some pure white in there, and so I'm going to be working in smaller patches so that I don't accidentally cover too much and erase those highlights that I was really looking forward to in doing this whole painting. I do want to point out that I am not trained to do any of this. This is all just my process and how I do things and how I've observed things over time. So if you happen to be watching this, which A, I'm grateful for, but B, if you happen to be watching this and are an art student, please don't go to your teacher and say, well, Doodlebomb said this, because I may have said that, but that does not mean it's correct. Also, you may have noticed that I used a Q-tip to soak up some of the paint there. That's just something that's super helpful if you've never done watercolor before. I always like to keep Q-tips with me, and I keep a towel, and it's a handkerchief, so it's not as absorbent as a towel or a microfiber cloth. I use it to clean out my brushes, but I also use it to soak up a little bit of watercolor as opposed to the bunch of watercolor that is soaked up by the Q-tip. And during this process, I tried to keep a balance between warm and cool colors. And the main way I was doing that was the surroundings and the nature were warm colors, and the tower and structures were cool colors. And I accidentally made my wash just a little bit warmer on the bridge than I meant to. So to bring that balance back in, I go and add some cooler toned shadows to it. The Krak des Chevaliers is kind of the textbook example of a Crusader citadel, and is widely considered to be the best preserved Crusader castle in the world, and even became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2006. This citadel has a cultural legacy not only in video games like Uncharted and Assassin's Creed, but also influencing fantasy literature as well as films depicting Crusader era warfare. As if this location is not already cool enough, we actually have a comment written by T.E. Lawrence, also known as Lawrence of Arabia, talking about this Crusader castle, saying that it was perhaps the best preserved and most wholly admirable castle in the world, a castle which forms a fitting commentary on any account of the crusading buildings of Syria. I was so pleased to find that quote, especially because of the connection to Uncharted that this project has had, but also because so much of Drake's deception is based around T.E. Lawrence and his historical accounts and the mystery and the city of Ubar. Like, T.E. Lawrence is the foundation of the narrative's mystery for the game. And I love that there is a real quote about this real location that was inspiration for a level in a game and how it all really does tie together. As this painting winds down, I just want to take a moment to thank every single one of you who has made it this far in the video. And even if you haven't made it to this video, thank you to all the people who watched that last video I made about the travel kit. That's by far had the most views. I've got the most subscribers from that. I don't know what I did different. If you know what I did different, please let me know in the comments. But thank you guys so much, and I hope you like this style of video. If not, give me some feedback. If you'd rather it just be an ASMR and be an hour and a half long of real-time painting and drawing with no talking, let me know, because I can do that too. But I've had a lot of fun doing this project, and I just really appreciate all of you. Here I finally paint that one little bit behind the farthest tower. I'm sorry to hold you guys in suspense for so long. I know it was killing me while I was editing. And here we are. I'm pretty happy with this painting. I'm really happy with my little travel set, and I'm extremely grateful to all of you who have made it this far in the video. Thank you so much. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.